Welcome to Mediumship Moments with psychic medium Kym Durham. Join her as she shares her personal journey with mediumship, connects with your loved ones, and discusses topics dealing with spirituality.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mediumship Moments. I'm your host, Kym Durham, second-gen psychic medium, and welcome to my podcast. Thanks for listening. I appreciate you joining in my journey. If you want to see more about me, hit KymDurham.com events. I've got events coming up throughout the region. If you want to see me on YouTube, it's Kym Durham Medium as well to watch this podcast. So let's get into it with Valentine. Nope. Try that again. April Fool's coming. Where are we? February went like this and we're on to April. So April Fool's Day, right? It's right around the corner. I want to talk about what that looks like and why it started. Historians really have talked about the draw between, or the connection between, ancient festivals that were celebrated in Rome. And I believe it's Hilnaria, I believe that's how you pronounce it. And it was at the end of March, and it was by devotees of the goddess Cybis or Cybele. And that was the healer goddess, right? The healer. So that's the connection with April Fool's, or this time period in the ancient times. The lively event, and let me tell you, the Romans, because I studied 4 years of Latin in high school. Yes, I was a little bit of a geek. I was an athlete, a musician, and a tad cerebral. Yes, I was. So the Romans knew how to throw a damn good toga party, right? But this event featured participants in costumes, playfully mocking their fellow citizens, including officials, because they didn't have, this is like their form of political satire back in the day. And it was believed to be influenced by the Egyptian myth of Isis, Osiris, and Seth. So imagine these parties that they were throwing, right? All kinds of regalia, mocking the political opponents or proponents of that time period. Additionally, some of the April Fool's origins have been linked to the vernal equinox, right? It's the first day of spring in Northern Hemisphere. And let me just tell you, are we ready for spring? I am. I love the winter. We didn't have a lot of snow this year, but it was cold. It's damn cold. But anyway, and, it's usually, what they say, the March comes in like a lion, goes out like a lamb. So that unpredictable weather often caught people out of sorts or off guard. So that's why they talk about April Fools, and let's face it, like we've dressed for, it's coming up and in a couple of days, it's going to be 80 degrees. What? For a day. But at night it's still like 34 degrees. It's been chilly. So definitely this time of year, the weather's unpredictable. But the tradition of April Fools, follows along a lot of popularity in Britain. The Britons like to have a party. And during the 18th century in Scotland, it evolved into a 2-day celebration. Any reason to have a party, but I love it. Beginning with the hunting of the gawk. What the heck is that? This is where they were sent on silly errands, participants were, which involved playful pranks. They called it Tally Day, Tallie. And they were targeting people's backsides, like attaching fake tails or kick me signs. Well, we still do that in the United States, don't we? You've seen that. Kick me. Somebody's walking around, especially kids in middle school or maybe even younger nowadays will do that. So I guess, Britain gets a bit of a recognition for some of the beginning of pranks and why April Fool's has evolved this way. So some famous pranks that happened were in 1957, the BBC aired a segment claiming that Swiss farmers were enjoying a spaghetti harvest. A spaghetti harvest, complete with footage of people picking noodles from trees. Do you imagine that? A little vermicelli over here, a little linguine over here. So that was a famous prank. And back in 1957, that was a big deal. Not a lot of social media, wasn't any in that time. So imagine people tuning in and going, what are they doing? They can grow spaghetti. In 1959, in Brazil, Sao Paulo, Frustrated with the city's clogged sewer systems, this I got a kick out of, and rising costs, initiated a campaign to elect a rhinoceros to city council. Yep, they'd had a surprise. It wasn't a jackass. Just saying. So they went with a rhino, and they succeeded. Yep. Rodney the Rhino was elected to city council, although she was ultimately disqualified by the election board and never took her seat, sadly. She's become one of the most iconic protest votes in Brazilian history. So if somebody votes and puts on their vote, write in rhino, it stems back to that, 1959. Those students, they led it. And it's kind of neat that it's ingrained in the history of Spain now for protest. Now, this is funny. Back in 1965, for April Fools, there was a thing called smell-o-vision. Smell-o-vision. The BBC claimed to have tested an innovative technology that could send scents through the airwaves to audiences everywhere. Wow. Numerous viewers reached out to BBC, sharing their excitement about the trial's success. Isn't that power of suggestion? Right? All over April Fools, people were pulling these kind of pranks. I think that's pretty cool. But one of the famous ones, more recently, that has been pulled off. Does anybody like to go for a run for the border? I do. Yep. Come on. How many of you college students out there or people in college, went to late night Taco Bell for a run to the border? Sustained many of us. It did. But in 1996, Taco Bell pulled a fast one on the public by announcing the purchase of the Philadelphia Liberty Bell. Yep. Taco Bell bought the Liberty Bell, intending to rename it the Taco Liberty Bell. And people actually went for that. They did. I mean, there's newspaper articles about it and everything. People are up in arms. What do you mean? A corporation's buying the Liberty Bell. How could that happen? There's a bunch of Karens back then, even then. But it was all done in levity for April Fools. Here's another famous one. And I was doing an earlier podcast and couldn't remember the gentleman's name. But in 2015, Jimmy Kimmel, the host of the Kimmel Live late night show, was famously pranked by Rihanna. She snuck into his home at 1 a.m., giving him quite a scare. Can you imagine? Thank God she wasn't shot. With a full camera crew in tow and mischievous sparkle in her eye, she dressed in stage makeup and platform boots. The SOS singer announced to viewers, "I'm about to wake Jimmy up. Wish me luck." As she quietly entered his bedroom, instead of just waking him up, Rihanna treated Kimmel to a private performance of her latest hit while showering him with dollar bills and flashing lights right in his face. Jimmy could barely react, exclaiming, "I've still got my mouthpiece in." So the April Fool's pranks, do you have any that you've done that you think back on and you go, wow, that was pretty cool. I like to, for a dear friend that was moving out of state and was a bit of my partner in crime, he had a convertible, little MGB. Packing up things and, we were shipping them off to another coast. And I came up with the idea, well, he was going to drive his car across the country. It was a little convertible. I took industrial-sized bags filled with packing peanuts and proceeded to fill his car up to the brim with packing peanuts. And we all got a laugh when we took pictures of him coming out and trying to get in his car as he was trying to drive away with the packing peanuts. So he was a good sport about it. But, it was a prank. It was April Fool's. He was leaving. And, that was a big idea for me to do that. But a common April, has anyone out there? I'd love to hear what kind of prank you've pulled. And did you get away with it? That's the fun part, is that when it's so seamlessly done that you have people scratching their head going, how the hell did they pull that off? But a common April Fool's joke is taking the stuffing out of Oreos and replacing it with toothpaste. Do you ever do that? Come to think of it, my wife likes double stuff. Maybe I should. Shh, don't tell her. Some people replace it with sugar or salt, but that would be cool. Toothpaste. Oh, that's a brilliant idea. Some people covering an onion in caramel like a candied apple, right? So they cover an onion instead of an apple. You know, that seems. I don't know. That's an idea. But the key to the successful April Fools is just be creative. Come up with something. You know, the teams that I've traveled with have pranked each other quite a bit. You know, they'll put the saran wrap around the bathroom. You know, if they've done ink, that's not fun. In the shower head. That stuff takes forever. But, you know, some other harmless pranks that you could pull on April Fool's Day, right? But it's all in the fun, harmless fun. And it's never fun to see somebody get hurt over, the spirit of the day. So let me put in here a little bit of dose of spirituality, if I may. April Fool's Day carries with it a spiritual message as well. The Fool in spiritual context symbolizes new beginnings, spontaneity, and lighthearted spirit. So in the spirit of April Fools, there's new beginnings, right? It's the beginning of spring, new beginnings, new intentions. Time to white sage the house, folks, and new beginnings over it, whether it's in jobs, in your career, in your personal life, in your love life. It is a good time to start those beginnings. The Fool, the spirit of April Fools, is unconcerned with other people's judgment, choosing instead to dance in his own rhythm. Isn't that wonderful? I love dancing to my own music. I always have music in my head. Before we started this podcast, Doug, my producer over there, was like, I'm not sure we can play that music. But anyway, there's always music going on somewhere in my head. But that spirit is always free of past mistakes and the future worries and embracing the present moment. And that's what April Fools is all about, embracing the present moment. We're so busy so often, we're not in the moment. Just take a moment, look around, see who's in your life, where you are, the excitement about where you're headed. And thank whomever you pray to and hold spiritually as your guide. But that's what this is all about. A fool may be actually the wisest of us all, as he recognizes life, what life is meant to be. When we're allowing ourselves to be a little foolish, the open of the door of the fresh perspective and opportunities for growth, right? So don't be afraid to, embrace world. I look at the world sometimes as a 6-year-old, in amazement, the technology we use. I was up in New York City recently and I got to meet some fabulous people just by dining next to each other. There was a gentleman who sat next to me. Daniel, shout out to you, young man. We got into a conversation about television shows and talked about, he was on To Date a Millionaire, that show. And he was just lovely. And to talk about perspectives, he was from Brazil and the different things that they had talked about, with dating. But he had a lightheartedness about him. And he got the biggest kick out of some of my sayings, but it was a lovely time. And he's still looking for his lid to fit his pot, shall I say. But, don't take life so seriously. And if you can shift into that freeness of allowing yourself some fun, go out and have some fun. Be spontaneous. Don't plan everything. I don't know. Take your person and go for a walk. If you're in Philadelphia, and just see what happens when you take a stroll down a street. Maybe there's a cafe you go into, or a little mamacita kind of restaurant. You go and you just meet the nicest people and have an experience that you didn't plan. And that's what's great about spontaneity and about April Fools, right? That we can be foolish, we can have some fun, we can prank some people, but it's all about embracing the new beginnings of spring. And it's a good time to get rid of some of those old, outdated habits. Come on now, we all get stuck, right? Don't we get stuck? We get stuck. But in mindsets that no longer benefit us. So allowing space for fresh opportunities and experiences is great. It's also a time when planetary alignments happen with new energies and chances for personal growth. So on April 4th, Jupiter and Pluto, we're going back a little horoscope here, offering transformative energies and possibilities. I want to talk about, I always leave you with a mediumship moment, but I will leave you with an April Fool's moment. I talked about the peanuts. I'll leave you with two, right? We were always pranking each other in the operating room. And you're like, what? You're doing what? That's serious stuff happening. Yes, that is serious stuff. And when you're working and you have someone's, you have someone's body beneath you and can feel the rise and fall of their chest, that's never taken for granted. It truly is amazing when you're in the operating room, the cardio room, and open heart, and you're seeing the heart start after being stopped for 10, 20, maybe 30 minutes. And one of those surgeons was leaving us, was going on to Cleveland Clinic. And he was something. He was a force of nature, he was. And we enjoyed working with him. But one of the ways that we pranked him on April Fool's is that we gowned him with a 48 double E bra sewn into his gown. I know. It took some doing, people. When there's a will, there's a way. And nurses get things done. And I'll tell you what, I had never seen him laugh so hard and enjoy that joke. And he wore it the whole entire damn surgery. And yes, we took pictures, and it didn't interfere with our surgery, because once they say we're beginning, you do your safety check, we're beginning, the work hat goes on. But even in the operating room, you can have some levity on April Fool's. So wherever you're working, whatever you're doing, see what little prank you can do. Just bring a smile to someone's face and, say April Fool's. So, as I always say, keep chatting with your angels because they can hear you.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time for another episode of Mediumship Moments. If you enjoyed this episode of Kim's podcast, check her out on Instagram and TikTok at Kym Durham Medium.